Breaking. This just sent shockwaves through the culture. Iman Shumpert was reportedly emotional in court, and within hours, headlines exploded claiming Teyana Taylor secured a staggering $10 million outcome in their divorce proceedings. The internet is in meltdown. Because for months, the public narrative was calm, mature, respectful. We're still good. We're co-parenting. No drama. But behind that polished front, there were negotiations. There were valuations. There were assets on the table. And now, a number, a massive one, has entered the chat. $10 million. Was this a shocking courtroom win? Was this a strategic settlement months in the making? Or was the public simply unaware of how high net worth divorces actually work? And here's the part that has everyone stunned. Witnesses claim Iman didn't look angry. He looked emotional, reflective, heavy. And that detail changed everything. Because money headlines are one thing, but visible emotion, that humanizes the story in a way numbers never could. So what really happened inside that courtroom? Was this a power shift? A financial knockout? Or just the formal closing of a chapter that's been unraveling quietly for months? And trust me, once we break down the timeline, the assets, and the strategy behind this reported $10 million figure, you'll understand why this isn't just a divorce headline. This is legacy. And it might redefine how we see both of them moving forward. To understand why this courtroom moment hit like a bombshell, you have to understand what Iman Shumpert and Teyana Taylor represented to the culture. This wasn't just a marriage. It was a movement. From the very beginning, their relationship felt electric. NBA champion energy meets fearless creative genius. Fashion-forward red carpets. Viral dance moments. Real-life chemistry that translated effortlessly on screen during their VH1 series, Teyana Iman. Fans didn't just watch them. They invested in them. They represented Black love, partnership, creative alignment. A couple that looked equally powerful, not one overshadowing the other, but building together. Iman wasn't just the athlete. He leaned into music, style, and personality. Teyana wasn't just the singer. She was directing, choreographing, shaping visuals behind the scenes for major artists. They weren't a typical celebrity pair. They were collaborators. And that's why the separation announcement in 2023 felt like a cultural pause. When Teyana confirmed they were separating, she was careful with her words. No cheating scandal. No dramatic betrayal. She framed it as growth. Evolution. Two people choosing peace over pressure. Iman echoed that tone, emphasizing fatherhood, stability, and mutual respect. It felt mature. Calculated. Almost too smooth. Because behind that calm public messaging, something much bigger was happening. When high-profile couples split, it's not just emotional, it's logistical. Years of shared property, investments, business ventures, intellectual property, real estate. And unlike couples where one spouse is financially dependent, both Iman and Teyana built independent empires during their marriage. Iman earned significant NBA contracts during his career, including championship-era earnings and endorsements. Teyana built revenue streams through music, directing, choreography, fashion collaborations, and creative consulting. So when divorce filings surfaced, fans immediately asked the real question: how do you untangle something that intertwined? Reports began hinting at property disputes and asset negotiations, including a luxury home reportedly tied to both names. Now here's where the narrative gets layered. Publicly, they remained aligned. No subtweets. No interviews exposing each other. No character attacks. Just co-parenting posts and career updates. But divorce court doesn't care about vibes. It cares about contracts. And when word started circulating that the final settlement may have included assets valued around 10 million going to Teyana, the internet reacted like it was a sudden victory. But was it? Or was it the legal reflection of marital property law? That's what makes this moment complicated. Because the public sees a number. The court sees documentation. And somewhere in between. Two people closing a chapter. Now let's talk about perception. Iman has consistently positioned himself publicly as centered and growth-focused since the separation. He's leaned into fatherhood, personal reflection, stability messaging. Teyana, on the other hand, has elevated into full mogul mode, directing high-profile projects, stepping into executive creative roles, redefining her brand beyond music alone. Both of them are thriving professionally, which makes the emotional courtroom detail even more striking. Because if you're winning in life, why look heavy in court? That's the part fans can't stop analyzing. Was it about the money? Or was it about finality? Because divorce isn't just splitting assets. It's splitting identity. For nearly a decade, they were Iman and Teyana. Now they're separate entities navigating the world independently. And here's what makes this even more layered. There's no public villain. No messy cheating headline. No scandal to blame. Just two successful people dividing what they built together. So when that 10 million figure started trending, it instantly framed the narrative in competitive terms. Who won? Who lost? But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the real question is, what did it cost emotionally to reach that number? Because courtroom silence hits differently than Instagram captions. And reports suggesting Iman appeared visibly emotional during proceedings shifted the tone from financial debate to human reality. No matter how strategic. No matter how structured. No matter how legally clean. Ending something that big hurts. And now the culture is watching two powerful individuals redefine themselves, financially disentangled, but forever connected through family. But here's the thing. Numbers stick. And once a headline attaches a dollar figure to your divorce, it becomes part of the story forever. Which brings us to the moment everything escalated. Because once that number hit social media, the conversation stopped being private and started becoming legacy-defining. Here's where everything shifted from quiet paperwork to cultural spectacle. Because once reports started circulating that Teyana Taylor was awarded assets reportedly totaling around 10 million, the narrative instantly turned competitive. Not reflective. Not nuanced. Competitive. Headlines framed it like a victory lap. 10M win. Courtroom bombshell. Iman takes hit. And suddenly, what may have been a structured asset division became a public scoreboard. But here's what people forget. High net worth divorces are rarely about someone losing money overnight. They're about dividing what was built during the marriage. And insiders began clarifying that the reported 10 million figure wasn't a single lump sum cash payout. It allegedly represented combined asset valuations, real estate equity, luxury vehicles, investment holdings, property tied to joint ownership. That's important context. But social media doesn't run on context. It runs on shock value. And here's where the emotional layer changed everything. Court observers claimed Iman Shumpert appeared visibly emotional during final proceedings. Not angry. Not combative. Not dramatic. Just heavy. Reflective. At one point, according to reports, he reportedly paused before responding to a question related to long-term asset structuring. Now, pause doesn't mean breakdown. But the image of a former NBA champion, composed, strong, usually controlled, looking emotionally weighed down. That hit the internet differently. Because suddenly, this wasn't about numbers. It was about finality. And that's the part fans underestimate. Divorce court isn't just math. It's memory liquidation. Homes where holidays happened. Studios where music was created. Shared business ventures that once symbolized unity. When a judge signs off, those shared chapters legally separate. And that reality can land hard, even when it's amicable. But here's the first twist that changed the temperature completely. Legal analysts began stepping in publicly to explain something crucial. If assets were acquired during the marriage, state law often treats them as marital property, regardless of who earned more at any given moment. Meaning, if Teyana contributed creatively, financially, or structurally to shared holdings, she's legally entitled to her portion. This wasn't a surprise attack. It may have been structured months ago behind closed doors. In fact, some insiders suggested negotiations had been ongoing for a significant period before any courtroom headlines surfaced. Which means the shock might be public, not private. And that reframes everything. Because if both parties agreed to terms ahead of time, then what fans are calling a dramatic win might actually be a negotiated conclusion. Still emotional. Still significant. But strategic. And here's where things escalated again. Clips of Iman exiting the courthouse started circulating. No statement. No smile. No anger. Just quiet composure. Cameras flashing. Reporters shouting questions about the 10 million figure. He didn't engage. That silence was louder than any quote. Because when you don't correct the number, people assume it's accurate. But when you don't celebrate, or deny, it suggests deliberation. Meanwhile, Teyana's social media presence remained business-focused. Creative projects. Fashion campaigns. Director life. No celebratory posts. No victory captions. Which sparked another wave of debate. Was she unbothered? Or simply strategic? Because celebrating a financial settlement publicly can shift perception quickly. So staying silent protects the narrative. And here's the twist nobody saw coming. An entertainment attorney publicly commented, without referencing names directly, that high-profile divorces often consolidate multiple assets into a single headline-friendly valuation, even when the breakdown is more complex. Translation: that 10 million number could represent property equity and asset value, not liquid cash changing hands. But by then, it didn't matter. The headline had already taken over. 10M, and numbers stick. Fans started reframing the entire relationship history through that lens. Was she planning this? Did he underestimate her leverage? Was there a prenup? And that's where things get even more layered. There has been no confirmed public documentation detailing a dramatic courtroom confrontation. No verified transcript of emotional testimony. Just observer reports and settlement whispers. Which means the emotional narrative is partly fueled by perception. And perception spreads fast. Now here's the deeper psychological layer. When a man appears emotional in court, during financial proceedings, public sympathy often shifts toward him. When a woman secures significant assets, public reaction can swing between celebration and skepticism. That gender dynamic quietly shaped online reactions. Some framed Iman as the wounded party. Others framed Teyana as a financially savvy mogul. But what if both narratives are incomplete? What if this wasn't about one person winning and the other losing? What if this was simply the legal untangling of a decade-long partnership? Still painful. Still expensive. Still heavy. But necessary. And here's the moment that raised eyebrows across industry circles. Shortly after settlement headlines broke, both individuals leaned harder into carefully curated messaging. Iman posted reflections about growth and fatherhood. Teyana amplified creative milestones. That alignment suggested something important: image stabilization. Because when financial numbers dominate your name in headlines, you redirect attention quickly. That's not manipulation. That's media survival. And here's the lingering question that keeps this from feeling finished: if the settlement was negotiated and structured calmly, why did the emotional detail hit so hard? Maybe because no matter how prepared you are, closing a chapter that big isn't just paperwork. It's identity shift. And identity shifts hurt, even when they are mutual. So now the culture is left debating something deeper than 10 million. They are debating legacy. Did this redefine who won the marriage? Or did it simply formalize what both parties had already accepted privately? One thing is clear. The financial number may have shocked everyone. But the emotional weight, that's what made it unforgettable. And what happened next? That's where the story escalates even further. And this is where the story stopped being a divorce update and turned into a full-blown cultural debate. Because once the reported 10 million settlement figure attached itself to Teyana Taylor, the internet didn't just react, it split. Headlines were everywhere. Reaction channels dissected the number like it was a championship stat line. Finance influencers started explaining marital property law. Relationship commentators reframed the entire marriage through a new lens. But here's where it escalated. The emotional detail about Iman Shumpert appearing visibly heavy in court started circulating faster than the financial number itself. Because money is shocking. But emotion is viral. Observers described him as reflective, quiet, possibly overwhelmed during portions of the proceedings. Not combative. Not explosive. Just emotionally present. And that changed everything. Because suddenly this wasn't a who won narrative. It became a what did this cost narrative. But here's the shocking reveal that reframed the entire situation. Legal insiders began clarifying that what's being labeled as a 10 million win may not represent a simple payout, but rather a valuation of jointly owned marital assets. Translation: if a luxury property appreciated in value during the marriage, and Teyana retained it as part of the settlement, that valuation counts toward the total. If vehicles, investments, or shared holdings were divided, those values stack up. Meaning the headline number may be mathematically accurate, but emotionally misleading. This wasn't necessarily a transfer of fresh cash. It may have been the formal division of what already existed. And that distinction matters. But by the time nuance enters the conversation, the viral headline has already won. Now here's where the temperature rose again. A well-known entertainment attorney posted a breakdown, without naming names, explaining how celebrity divorces often consolidate asset divisions into a single headline figure, even when those assets are structured over time. That subtle clarification sparked another wave of commentary. Was the internet overreacting? Was this number less dramatic than it sounds? Or was it still a significant financial shift regardless of structure? Meanwhile, neither Iman nor Teyana corrected the narrative. No press release. No public statement. No social media clarification. Just continued silence. And in celebrity culture, silence after a financial bombshell is almost always intentional. Because once you confirm or deny, you extend the life of the story. By saying nothing, you let it burn out on its own. But fans weren't ready to let it burn out. Instead, they started digging deeper. Was there a prenup? If so, did it protect certain assets? Did one side concede to avoid a prolonged public battle? Were there custody or co-parenting components tied to financial structuring? None of those questions have been publicly answered. And that vacuum of clarity created more speculation. Then came another layer that shocked people. Industry watchers noticed both parties immediately doubling down on their respective brand narratives. Iman leaned into fatherhood posts, reflections about growth, and disciplined messaging about stability. Teyana amplified creative announcements, directing credits, and high-fashion visuals. It felt coordinated, even if it wasn't. Because when financial headlines dominate your name, you shift the spotlight back to purpose. That's media strategy. But here's the part that really stunned observers. There was no bitterness. No leaked arguments. No accusations. No public mudslinging. In an era where celebrity divorces often spiral into exposés and interviews, this one remained clean. Almost surgical. And that's what made the emotional courtroom detail hit even harder. Because when everything else is controlled, a glimpse of raw feeling stands out. Now let's zoom out for a second. Two successful individuals. Years of shared assets. Children involved. Public image at stake. Multi-million-dollar valuations. And a courtroom moment that signified permanent closure. Even if the settlement was fair. Even if it was negotiated calmly. Even if it was legally textbook. That moment still represents the end of something once powerful. And endings, especially expensive, public ones, carry weight. Here's the deeper psychological twist that analysts started discussing. When a man appears emotional during financial proceedings, public sympathy often shifts toward him. When a woman secures a high-value settlement, public reaction can swing between celebration and suspicion. Those gender dynamics quietly shape the conversation online. Some called Teyana strategic and empowered. Others called Iman strong for maintaining composure. But the reality might be simpler. This wasn't about someone winning. It was about formalizing separation. Still painful. Still heavy. Still headline-worthy. And here's the cliffhanger that keeps this story alive. Insiders suggest that while financial terms may be finalized, co-parenting and shared brand history ensure that these two will remain publicly linked for years. Which means any future relationship, collaboration, or public shift will be viewed through the lens of this 10 million headline. That number is now part of their story. Forever. And if either of them decides to speak candidly about what that courtroom moment actually felt like. If Iman explains the emotion. If Teyana clarifies the structure. If documents surface detailing the true breakdown. The narrative could flip again. Because right now, we have a headline. We have perception. We have emotion. But we don't have the full story. And until we do, the debate isn't cooling down. It's evolving. Once the reported settlement details started trending, the culture did what it always does. It chose sides. Because when you attach a headline like 10 million to Teyana Taylor and emotional in court to Iman Shumpert, the internet instantly builds a scoreboard. And scoreboards create winners and losers. First came Team Teyana. They framed this as empowerment. They pointed out that she built, contributed, created, and expanded during the marriage. That she wasn't just a spouse, she was a brand architect, a director, a businesswoman. So if the reported settlement reflects jointly built assets, that's not a win. That's equity. Comment sections filled with phrases like, "She secured what she helped build." "This is what protecting your future looks like." "Marriage is partnership, legally and financially." Then came Team Iman. They leaned into the emotional detail. The idea that he appeared heavy in court hit people differently. Fans praised his composure, saying he handled everything with dignity and restraint. Some argued that public sympathy naturally flows toward the person who looks visibly affected, especially when financial headlines are dominating the conversation. And then there was a third group. The skeptics. They questioned the headline framing entirely.